Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Trevor, if you haven't joined me before. So, on Unraveling Native American Mysteries, as I promised, today we are going to unravel some ancient rock art and come to understanding and meaning. And also, how did I come to this? There are two ways that I discovered how to interpret the rock art. And also, why was this rock art created and who created it? Some of the rock art has been picked or chipped, and that is called a petroglyph. And a pictograph is that's painted on the rock. And when it comes to spiritual truth or the occult, we must realize we live in a world that's opposite of what once was. So when we look at this, some of it may seem a bit strange. And to interpret this, not to offend anyone, is to get a true understanding of what was. And why I started this YouTube channel was to reveal the ancient Mayan mysteries as was revealed to me. So I'm still coming to that in the future. And also to my subscribers in India, Hindustan, I haven't forgotten about you, I'm still coming to India. How did India save the world, both morally and spiritually? So don't miss out on that episode. When I went through my awakening and remembering, and all that knowledge of Mayanism filtered through into my consciousness. And studying Mayanism and the Mayan belief and religious system, I was allowed to see the similarities that existed all over and coming to an understanding of this. So this is one way to do it when you connect the Aztec, the Inca and the Maya. And then you will see the similarities that exist through North America. Because as I said before, everything was connected in ancient times, unlike early historians would tell us. And that was a narrative that they specifically created. By using these images, how I came to this, and then also being initiated in the matrix by the ancients. And in this case, in particular, by the plumed serpent. When we start to look at ancient religions and go back thousands of years, their religions were central to their lives. So what came first in ancient cultures was spirituality and religion. So in ancient times, there was a time that we call the glory days. The glory days of the gods, kings and men, in particular with the Maya. So what is this all about? So there was a time in our history where extraterrestrials, aliens as you call them, these higher beings came to our planet and actually landed, because they don't normally land. So they landed all over the world, and including in all the Americas. And this is when we start to see the truth of what once was. And if you look at the Americas, in particular North America, so what happened to the North Americans? Well, a lot of their rock art has also disappeared. So if you look at the picture behind me, we can see the canyon lands. But what are we actually seeing? We're seeing water. So they flooded these canyon lands, these reserves, these ravines with water to make lakes, Lake Powell and all these other, Glen Canyon. And this is what you can see behind me. And this is where Native Americans actually lived. So when we look at the rock art, you can always see hands that are painted on the walls. So what they did was they placed paint on their hands, and those people, that tribe, those Native Americans living in those areas, they were the ones that placed their handprints on the rocks. So this was to let people know we were here. This was us that were here. That is their signature. They are leaving their mark for future generations. And this can actually be seen all over the world. And this is also found all over the states. From Utah, Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, right up to the Mississippi, and really all over the ancient world, including the Maya and Aztec. And we see this cross, what looks like a cross. So this is the four directions. And when we take a closer look at it, we can understand that this is Venus, the planet Venus. So before the dawning of the light, before the awakening of mankind, there comes the early light, as it's always been. And in this case, it's the Sovereign Plumed serpent. Our Sovereign Plumed serpent is symbolical of the brightest star in the sky, and that is Venus. And Venus in some way is also symbolical of the ancient beings, the Naga, those ancient serpent-like beings that come from another solar system, coming to humanity to give us wisdom and knowledge. And also, what did the great master himself say in the scriptures? Be wise as serpents, yet gentle as doves. And obviously Christ understood who the Naga were. And we see the Naga in Hinduism, Buddhism, we see it in all the way through Mexico. And if you take a look at the pyramid here, at the base of the step pyramid, we see the heads of the plumed serpent. You can see he's got curly horns on his head. And all the images through Mesoamerica, from the Aztec to the Inca, you can see this plastered on all their step pyramids, in all their temples, in nearly every single thing. Because at one time, the plumed serpent walked amongst the Mesoamericans. So in this image here, you can see the plumed serpent with his horns, as in Mayanism. But when you see the sovereign plumed serpent in real time, his horns are not curled. This is what they look like. So here we see this all over the Americas. And take a look at these serpents of rock art from Utah, New Mexico, Colorado, all the way up to the Mississippi. There you see a horned serpent. Why would all these cultures make this image of a horned serpent? And recent discoveries in in the Amazon have also found a horned serpent. So from, I think it's Colombia, here we can see a panel behind me, and they have the horned serpent too. So how is it that this horned serpent starts to appear everywhere? Because they knew the truth. How would anyone forget one of the most important happenings of the world when the gods actually descended, as the legends actually say, amongst the Maya and the Mesoamericans? In ancient times, the most important things, those deities, were immortalized in their stuccos, in their art, in their carvings, in their temples. So the Native American Indians didn't have these temples. Well, in some sense they did, but they carved this on rock. And this rock art goes back thousands of years, some of it even going back before Atlantis. So you're looking at rock art that's beyond 12,000 years. So the Native Americans placed their most important memories, their most important events, what was central to their belief, on rock. And remember, the rock of ages. So the rock is going to be there forever. We will be gone and those rocks will still be there. We will reincarnate and the rocks will be there. Huge horns emanating from his head. The only thing I've got wrong is the ears. There is no ears. So delete the ears from the image and then you've got a fairly accurate image of what once was. So I was initiated quite some time back, and as I was initiated, there in front of me was the plumed serpent. And with other beings, they initiated me through these rings of initiation. And as I flew through the rings of initiation, so you must understand these rings are what they call the ring pass knot in occult literature. So the ring pass knot is that barrier that your soul needs to break through to expand your consciousness. Otherwise it never grows beyond that. So it needs to be broken. So in an initiation, you pass through these rings and go through certain experiences. And in my particular initiation, I went through all the rings until I found myself beyond Earth's atmosphere. And I was initiated further. So what an incredible experience to be floating upward and seeing these rings in the atmosphere. And they were huge, they weren't just around me, they were massive. And so you can understand when the Native Americans were doing their sacred ceremonies, they were also initiated into these rings of initiation, this portal of light that takes you into the other worlds. And when you look at the other image of the plumed serpent on the Mayan calendar, we can see there's a head on either side. Well, that is how he functions in the world. If he's a dragon or a serpent, it doesn't mean to say the other side's a tail. Although it can be a tail, it can still be a head. Because in the Matrix, in the world of immortals, this is how they work in the higher worlds of light. From a Western understanding, when they see this, they would be quite shocked because it looks like something else. But this is the horned plumed serpent. So we can see how important this was. This deity was central to not only Mayanism, not only to the Aztecs, but to the Native Americans. Thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of rocks and cliff faces had these images with the plumed serpent, and with him standing as a being with his horns up straight. And it must also be remembered, when we look at the rock art, a lot of it is similar. It wasn't just anyone that was allowed to do these carvings on the rocks. There were specific people whose job it was to create this. So in ancient times, the priests, the holy men, all those sacred people would come from Mexico all the way along the Red Road and spread through the Americas to not only bring plant medicine, but to trade other goods. And we also need to know, in those days, they never had horses or donkeys in the early days of the Americas. So everything had to be carried. So they had to limit what they could trade. So the most important things were traded, and those important things all related to their spirituality, to their religion. So from the feathers that were being used, to the cacao that was in sacred ceremonies, and to the different plant medicines. And as we know, a lot of the rock art has disappeared over the centuries. A lot of it has disappeared, but there's so much of it that so much of this knowledge still remains. This image here to my left, where we have an ancient being that is holding a serpent, similar to that you see in other ancient cultures around the world. We all know this, we've seen it. So how is it that they had the same stuff? Because the same thing was going on all over the world when the gods arrived. And take a look at this image. Well, this looks like E.T., doesn't it? So we know this is an extraterrestrial. This is a being that came out of a spacecraft. Call him E.T. What do you think he's doing with his hands? Well, he's obviously projecting energy. It's magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy, cosmic energy, that they are able to manipulate things behind the scenes with this energy. Everything is energy, so them being a lot more advanced, they have this knowledge of how to manipulate it. So the turtle here that we see is also fairly simple to interpret. Not only does it have the sacred connotation to ancient wisdom, this turtle here is symbolical of a clan, the turtle clan. So it's a certain tribe that bears the mark of the turtle. Just as all through the Americas, you'll have a big claw. This bear claw was a certain clan, and so it was. And we also need to remember, we see maize all over carved onto the rocks. Well, maize was central to them. That was the food they needed to grow and eat and store along the cliff faces for the winter months. So this is why they placed it on the rock in amongst the gods, because it was the gods blessing them with the rain and blessing them with a good harvest, so that they would make sure they had enough stock for the winter and early summer months. So again, these circles, they are not raindrops. It is not an image of Atlantis, although it can seem like it, and pretty accurate in terms of that. So looking at this rock art, we can now understand from two views, from studying and comparing the different cultures and seeing the similarities, and by entering the matrix and seeing the truth for ourselves. So here we have two ways to put this together. And I'd like to hear your comments on what you think. And now when you look at the rock art in the future, you can at least have a little bit of an understanding of what once was important to the Native Americans. And it wasn't just by chance that they did these things. I hope you enjoyed this video, and to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe.
La 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 la